fire. Get your motherfucking ass off your motherfucking pity party horse. Get your ass in the fight. You part of this shit, whether you want to be or not. So you might as well pick up your motherfucking banner and march with the motherfuckers that's gonna be victorious because they on the move. That's what segment gonna tell them.
Get it together, like 702 said. We have to get it together. And, you know, the one thing that irks my nerves is when we claim royalty, royalty, royalty. It's in our DNA. We got magic, and ain't nothing magical about none of the shit that you do.
Yeah. No, nothing magical and nothing regal.
Nothing.
Got no etiquette whatsoever.
No code, no respect, nothing.
Yeah.
But what you said was so true. If you are able to connect with your family, if you still have elders that are living, because this was an attack like on the elders, just really on all of us, but really attack on our elders, because when history is lost, the younger generation is lost. And a lot of my generation is still trying to live their younger days. So that grandma and grandpa shit is kind of far-fetched or hard to find because they trying to relive their youth. So we have to take our position as elders and really settle down in our lives and in our hearts and in our minds. And we have to open up to the lessons that we share with each other. And we got to connect with our family again if you can. If you can make your wrongs right, if you can make amends, do it. If you can't, pray about it. Ask for forgiveness. Ask to be led to figure out how to change and how to elevate and how to be the best you possible.
The secrets of prayer, since we on Oracle Connections, is the first understanding is that you're talking to your higher consciousness, and your higher consciousness is your direct telephone line to Prime Source Creator. You can't send your higher self to get an answer and Source don't give it to him. The problem is when you get done with the prayer, that's when you have to, as they say in the church, let go and let God.
Right.
Right? You got to let your higher self in the universe work out the problems that's too complicated for you to work out, but you work out the ones within your control.
Yeah.
So you make the microcosm flips the macrocosm. If you control the ones you can, the ones you can't, the universe control for you.
You are giving big gems. That's a big
right. And don't close your prayer by saying Amen, because that's telling the force of the God to keep it a secret. And if you keep it a secret, then it's kept sacred. That means you can't access it in the mundane.
What's the meaning of Amen? Because I say Amen or Ashe.
It comes from Amen or Amun, and it means the unknown aspect of God, but it's an alchemically charged name. And it has a direct energetic effect on whatever it is that you're sealing with Amen. That means that you saying the prayer, but you blocking it at the end. Right. You're keeping it a secret.
Like God got caller
ID it's sacred,
on the phone or something.
Right. So because it's kept sacred, you can't manifest it in a mundane. Because the mundane is the profane. The sacred cannot be accessed in the profane. So when you tell your higher self to Amen, keep it a secret, that means keep it sacred. That means save it for my next life because I ain't going to access it this one. You actually putting yourself in a personal conjure, but you don't know it.
So in let's say in relevance to people who say it without that knowledge that you just gave, then
right. So they got accumulated,
right?
Yeah. So they got accumulated energy built up in what you, the lack of a better way of putting it, I'll say prayer credit. All you did was recorded all your shit in the universal mind because you did nothing in order to make it surface in the physical world. Right? Now, some people know how to use the energy by doing certain stuff in the physical world that activates the prayer energy that was kept sacred.
Right. Because the power
Right?
of intention sometimes can, you know.
Right. Right. So this is what those prayer groups, what we call prayer warriors in the church,
Mm-hmm.
they used to be the ones who held the secret to making the prayer manifest in short order by using the 369 science of the sisters.
Mm-hmm.
That all of that got to be retaught to y'all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, prayer was sacred. Prayer was
Yeah.
you.
But
Yeah.
prayer is the talking to the creator.
Mm-hmm.
Meditation is listening.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't meditate, you won't never get your answer.
Mm-hmm. That's why sometimes you need to stop having all them distractions. Sometimes you got to shut that music off because we're people that love like music. We're people who love distractions. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes.
Yeah, but we can also learn how to use those things as facilitators.
Oh, for sure.
But we have to be also willful minded that that's what we're using it for.
Yes.
If we don't attach that to it, we can't use it for that purpose.
Yes. Correct. I like.
Right? So people be saying, what's the meaning of life? Right? We hear it all the time. Ain't got none till you give it one.
Mm-hmm.
Life has no meaning until you give it a meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Has no value until you value it.
Mm-hmm.
If you have no value for life, then your life has no value to yourself. You know, you are running what you call an errant course,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the best thing to do is to always keep in mind to follow the golden rule. If you don't want nobody to mistreat you, don't mistreat nobody. Each one teach one. We all gonna reach some.
Love thy neighbor like you thy love thyself.
Yeah. Don't love your enemy though.
No.
But you better damn well respect that motherfucker, or he gonna run roughshod over you.
Yeah.
Don't that's what it should have said. Respect your enemy, not love that motherfucker.
Respect it enough to keep your head on a swivel.
Yeah, because once you respect them, that means that you got enough understanding to know the danger that it is to fuck with this particular enemy, and for you to overcome that enemy, it requires you to have a certain level of um, insight that supersedes what they're capable of doing to overthrow you.
Mm-hmm.
But by you being respectful of their position and their power, now you put yourself into the position like Aikido to deflect it and use their energy against them as opposed to allowing them to use it to subjugate you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? In this particular case, the sister's taking a ball and going home, gonna shut this bitch down. But it's gonna happen in waves.
Mm-hmm.
It's already started, so it's just a matter of when.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
All right, I'm about to wrap this one up. I'm getting tired now. I'm ready to lay my butt down.
Yes. Well, have a great rest. Thank you for having me on here.
Yeah, thank you for coming on.
You taught me so much. You're always sharing so much. So I thank God for continuously protecting you and blessing you and giving you provision and all of the good things. So until we speak again.
I think you're trying to make me blush.
No, I'm giving homage and paying respect. All right.
Yeah, that's gonna make me blush.
Oh, you are red Indian. You got red tone. All right.
Yeah, I'm ready, red for real.
Right.
Yeah. All right, sweetie. I'm gonna talk back to y'all later. I'm about to exit out of this one.
Okay.
So, just wanted to cash some receipts, go over a little understanding of tuning in the tarot or the oracle read in order to fine tune that shit. Now I'm getting a little exhausted because Big Mama had me doing physical labor, which I'll be doing some more tomorrow. But it got to be done in order to get where we're trying to go. So it is what it is, but it was what it was, and now it's gonna be what it's gonna be. So peace out, everybody. Unity, fam.
Right there. See it?
Okay, let's start there. Let's start there.
All right.
Yeah, scope application, section 1. The American Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People applies to the indigenous people of the Americas. That's us. Right there. Right? What number 2 say? Self-identification as indigenous people will be a fundamental criteria for determining to whom this declaration applies. States shall respect the right to such self-identification as indigenous, whether individually or collectively, in keeping with the practices and institutions of each indigenous people. That part right there is telling you that you have to self-identify. See, the first thing it says, self-identification. That means that you identify yourself as an indigenous people, and that you are the one responsible for stating your status, right? And the states shall respect the right to such self-identification as indigenous, whether it's an individual or a group, individually or collectively, in keeping with the practices and institutions of each indigenous people. That means that some tribes are slightly different in cultural expression of the same culture. One tribe might barbecue turkey for the chief, but another one might slaughter a bison. Right? But whichever one it is, we know what the culture is saying. All right. Article 2 says states recognize and respect the multicultural and multilingual character of indigenous peoples who are an integral part of their societies. Right? When they say multicultural, that means it's a whole lot of different cultures from the land. And then it say multilingual character. That means that we got a lot of languages. So they can't say that, well, you don't speak this language, you ain't indigenous. They can't say that because they right here acknowledging that. And they saying that we are an integral part of the society. Well, these things are an integral part of our societies, right? So then we go into Article 3. Indigenous people have the right to self-determination. What that means? Your rights is not negotiable. They are inalienable. So self-determination is you got the right to determine which one of the chiefs you following, if you following the one in your direct bloodline descent, or if you following the one from your tribal clan descent. Right? So it's different per tribe across the land because they already told you we got a multi-cultures on our land already before they came. Right? And by virtue of that right to self-determination, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. That means that they can't interrupt us economically, our social behaviors of our tribal affiliations. They can no longer persecute us for wearing feathers in public. Right? And cultural development, that means going back to our original traditions and customs, because we have to go back to our shit to overthrow their shit. All right. Nothing in this declaration may be interpreted as implying for any state, people, group, or persons any right to engage in any activity or to perform any act contrary to the character of the Organization of American States or of the Charter of the United Nations, or construed as authorizing or encouraging any action which would dismember or impair, totally or in part, the territorial integrity and political unity of sovereign and independent states. What that mean?
Yeah.
That means that Article 4 of this declaration says that the United Nations can't interfere in our business, nor any other individual states that's under the Charter, Organization of American States, or the Charter of the United Nations. So the United Nations is also in an agreement with America, right, which gave them control of the policing policies on the land. That's why they closed now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? All right, let's go on to the next part. Do this look like we getting to something?
So that shit get lit, man.
Mm-hmm. All right, human rights and collective rights, right? Full effect and observance of human rights. Remember what Malcolm said? We don't need civil rights.
Yeah, right?
He said we need human rights, right?
Mm-hmm.
This it right here. Indigenous people and individuals have the right to the full enjoyment of all human rights and fundamental freedoms as recognized in the Charter of the United Nations, the Charter of the Organization of American States, and international human rights laws. That means this taking all of those people they just named in there,
Mm-hmm.
that they saying they can't interfere in our fundamental freedoms and our basic human rights any longer.
Mm-hmm.
Now remember, they was an occupied government masquerading as a de facto government when they were, as a de jure government when they were in fact operating under the color of law in a de facto capacity and giving us the illusion that they had the authority. But all corporations derive their authority, all corporate political bodies, from the people that they govern.
Mm-hmm.
Melting pot, that's not a Eurocentric terminology applied to the land. That's their understanding of the land before they ever came here. Right? Then also, this motherfucker over here didn't believe in, if you had a voice, unless you proved yourself to be a liar, your voice had legitimacy until we can analyze what you saying. We didn't just take your word for it, but we didn't discount what you said. We went and used it as a foundational tool to do a research to determine if we need to pay attention to what the fuck you saying. Because you might be telling us exactly how to get out of the problem, but we so used to now listening to the other man that we don't give a fuck what's going on with the brother man. Right? So, in academia, they was calling us Negroes, the coloreds, the African Americans, and all that shit. But in the hood, we was greeting each other. What's happening, brother? What's going on, blood? Wait a minute. Brothers. That's what Stone's vice lords call each other. Blood. That's what them bloods in LA call each other. Wait a minute. We've been knowing who we was the whole time and been calling ourselves who we were without even knowing we was identifying ourselves to one another in the presence of everybody, and they made fun of us and called it blaxploitation. Pay attention to the exaggeration, because the exaggeration is the thing that says pay attention. And if you pay attention to the exaggeration, you'll find a whole revelation of a nation that's been percolating under the bottom the whole time. Talking in ghetto code, did it eat that, as motherfucking Gil Scott would say. right? So the parents got a language. The children got a language. They don't always speak the same language, but the children normally know what the parents is talking about, right? All them wow. Words of wisdom. Wow. And so this is what we do. I look at all of the conflicts in history, and I noticed that there's a lot of different causes for conflict, but there's a better cause for peace. You see, you got to have two sides to fight a war, because when the people are used as the weapons, you take the weapons out of the equation. When the weapons are no longer in the equations of war, then they can't destroy us. They can't crush us. Peace. So as I sit back and I observe, I remember when I was a little boy, we'd be at the basketball court. There's always somebody that want to be unruly, ignorant, foolish, irrational, and hard to work with, right? So when we played basketball, what we would do is we take our ball and go. Take our ball and we would go home. This had a kind of odd effect that I noticed. Be a whole bunch of trash talk, but within short order, if a ball don't show up, everybody go home. They go on their separate ways. You know, you got some stragglers that sit around and stay where they at. Don't want to make no moves. They just want to stay stagnant, but that's fine. They still can't play ball. They can stay at the park on the basketball court, but they can't play ball without a basketball. And those who own the basketball is aware of this. They know this. But if the person who owned the basketball is unaware that he can take his ball and go home, and it would cripple the whole game, he don't have to tear nothing up. He don't have to fight nobody on the court. He don't have to fight the bully. He don't have to slap the little guy. All he had to do is just say, hey, man, give me my ball. I'm going home. And he go home. Everybody going to be looking at him crazy. But guess what? Everybody end up going home if no other balls come. Now, expand that on a massive scale, like globally, right? Let's just say that America, no, let's say, we don't even use country we in. We want to use two countries that don't got nothing to do with us directly. So let's say we take Brazil wants to attack India. And none of the soldiers are willing to fight in that war. None of them. Not a single one, from the generals to the foot soldiers. How the heck can we die? How can you wage a war when the tools of the war are inoperable? They don't work. You can't. It's impossible. Take your ball and go the fuck home. But you would have to have a call for a specific type of unity across various borders. You would have to have a call for unity that would embrace so many people that when people take their ball and go home, everybody go home. They already know what it's about. They already know what it's about. It's about the march to peace. And the march to peace sometimes is a family-oriented event. Go home. Play with your children. Kiss your wife. Hug your mama. Get wisdom from your father. You know? You don't have to always tear things apart, shred stuff. It's a reason for all of this chaos is because we keep allowing it. The easiest way to stop the foolishness and the ignorance, the easiest way, is all of the mothers tell your child, we ain't fighting for these animals, because they have to be animals to pit us together to fight us like animals. And if they're going to put us together and fight us like animals, they have to use something against us that would allow us to do that. And the greatest tool in the history of the world is divide and conquer. Now, we've been thinking that there's been one nation versus another nation in these wars. That's absolutely not what it is. It's never been in Germany versus France in World War II. That wasn't even the purpose. World War I, it got nothing to do with no Lithuanian ships. You know, it got nothing to do with that. And it's population control by using the very people that you want to quell the population as the implements of war. They know that we like combat because we mastered the martial arts in all ancient cultures, because we wanted to learn how to defend our clans from invaders, no matter where they may come from. Here we are now, we on Earth. We look around and all we see is conflict, bloodshed, disunity, disharmony, backbiting, backstabbing, resentments, hatred, bigotry, foolishness, and ignorance. All that stuff in one pot, then they stir it up and feed it to us, and we eat it. We don't have to eat it. Every mother should just call her children in the military and just say, come home. We're not fighting for these animals. If we're going to have any type of conflict, we should be fighting in our own interest. Who's gaining? Look at the wounded warriors. See, we need to do something like to federalize this wounded warrior project. And right, but that's the whole point. It was a trick from the beginning. Okay, I'm going to read this. Many nations that does not look like us came together against us and plotted against each other. Right, but see, that's the trick. Because they used the minority population on the planet. By exalting the minority population, they got the smallest group. So at the time that the people of the mass realized that the smallest group is oppressing the largest group, then we could just annihilate them and get rid of the problem. But that was never the problem to begin with, because then they're going to go to the next smallest group and superiorize them. We can't fall for that. This is the end of them games. So it worked like this. Ain't no more white people that was created in this Babylonian experiment. The genetic mess up has been clean. That's over with. Now everybody have the capabilities of rising to their own level of greatness. Everybody. And because everybody can rise to their own level of greatness, we should all be able to pull this plank out our eye and see the enemy for who he is. If we trace it all back, it end up with one person. And, you know, they want to tell us, you know, don't be anti-Semitic and all of this. It ain't Israel as a nation over there in the Middle East, because they pawns. They pawns. The Khazarians, the Ashkenazi, the Sephardi, those are pawns. No, those are not pawns. They're more like rooks and bishops on the chessboard. They bigger pieces, but they're expendable. So you got to track it back. Now, how do you track it back? You follow the dollar. You follow the currency, you find out who reaps the greatest benefit of all. Well, I used to think when I was a lot younger that it was the royal families of Europe. But then I came to, through research, to realize that it's not the royal families of Europe. It traced back to one particular house, in one particular place, in one particular person. And he wears a crown that represents 3 tiers, which is your economics, your military, and political strength. And also it represents your religious strength. By combining them all together, that's where your spiritual weaving comes in, your spider web. So if the world want to know who's responsible, you got to find out who's claimed right of all of the souls on earth to undermine the rights of the people who own their own soul. Now remember, your U.S. Constitution says, nope, your Declaration of Independence says that you have God-given inalienable rights. That means that nobody can't take them from you. but they can trick you out of them if you surrender them. They can trick you into giving up your rights. But there's somebody on this planet that filed paperwork in 1301 to capture the souls of the people. And it's the same one person that seats all of the royalty and confirms them and gives them the appearance of being the problem. Now, the royal families do have things that's going to be dealt with, like adrenochrome in the drinking of baby blood that's prohibited. And you don't know that Queen Elizabeth is not still alive. She's been dead. That's an imposter that they're using over there, so they don't want nobody to know. She's gone. And Pope Francis makes mockery of every single human on earth. He is the animal. I told y'all at the close of the age, I would pull the curtain off the man who stands behind it, pulling the strings in the land of Oz. His name now is Pope Francis, but it's the same symbiote who jumped body to body for thousands of years so he can survive eternally. And he wants to deprive you of your eternal life by allowing his host to live as comfortable as possible. But he have to have a certain biological signature trait. And this certain biological signature trait allows the symbiote to attach. Now, if you go back, you probably won't see it very far back in history, but when they see the Pope, they tell you there's a meeting of, what you call them, bishops, and that they are all in there voting and negotiating who would be Pope. That's cool. It makes sense, but it ain't true. You see, they got a period of time where they have to go through different blood types and genetic signatures in order that the symbiote can actually cleave to the host. And so they have a series of these hosts that sit there in a stasis-like state while the symbiote attaches through his eye into his brain. And there's a part of the brain that connects the two hemispheres, and this little symbiote lodges there. Now, I don't think the world should participate in this rotten, bloody mess anymore. You know what I think they ought to do? I think every head of state need to send me and my thugs over there so I can get that symbiote out of his head. All these kids don't need to keep coming home with arms blowed off, legs blowed off, holes in their body, bullets in their head, plates in their head. That's horrendous. That's atrocious. And it's unnecessary and uncalled for. But nobody wants to trace the issue of divide and conquer back to its source. People should love each other and should try to work together at all costs to overcome this unstoppable evil. But we don't want to do that because the evil turns us against each other, and it began with the Tower of Babel scenario. The Tower of Babel was there as a reminder of the problem and who caused it. So, when you go through the John Wick series, John Wick is a man in love with a woman that he met that got him out of a horrible lifestyle. And as you walk through the storyline, he ends up in part 3. Now, notice there's 3 parts to the John Wick story. And he goes into the desert, and here you have Maitreya. Here you have Maitreya. I told y'all he was the one behind the problem. I posted him in Africa deceiving people on my Facebook page so y'all can see exactly who's responsible for this evil that we are being subjugated by. Also, his pawn or his queen is the Pope. Check that out. His queen is the Pope. Now here's the analysis that you understand what you're dealing with. If you go back in history, you will notice that before 325, there was no such thing as what we call the Catholic Church because Christendom hadn't been established yet. It was established by Pope Constantine. Pope Constantine needed the believers, the faithful, the Almoravides, the defenders of the faith. He needed to capture them, put them in sequestered locations, and under the threat of death, they would have to come up with a common belief system in which they would install the papacy. They did that, but they left us clues along the way, breadcrumbs, for us to discover this deception and expose this rotten beast for who he is. Now, the Pope is the queen, the seat that he's sitting in. This was originally called the Noon Priestess. They never changed them. They just call them nuns now. And the Noon Priestess was headed up by a woman who we know her as the Black Madonna. And a lot of people that understand the history of ancient Egypt will call her Isis, the Queen of Heaven and Earth. That's her seat. I'm going to replace her back on her seat if the people want the tyranny of Earth to end. Otherwise, I'm just going to go hang out with my peeps in the hood and do hood stuff. We're going to clean up the hood. I would rather clean Earth up than to just focus on one local community. I didn't do all this studying for nothing. I couldn't rest in my soul until I found out who was responsible for this treachery. The one you call Yahweh in your Old Testament, that you call God now, is the same one that the Christ called Legion in the New Testament. And your proof is all in the book. When you go back to the tribes of Israel, one of the tribes is called Gad, G-A-D. If you know grammar, Grimm's Law of Grammar say all vowels are interchangeable in translation. The word Gad is your word God. When they translate it into German, it becomes the word Gut, G-U-T, because the D and the T is interchangeable. Also, in the vowel scenario, just like when you change your F and V's when you go from a knife to knives, it's the same law of grammar. So now we understand that Gad means a truth. Well, when he asked the demon, who are you? He said, we are legion, for we are many. That's saying the exact same thing. Now, the absolute verification is the Pope has declared himself owner of all souls on earth. And it's the same symbiote, it's just a different host. And he thinks that nobody's going to figure him out. I've posted him antagonizing and taunting the people of earth and doing exactly what the text say he would do at this time to expose who he is. He said that Satan is strong and the Christ has failed. Now he's supposed to be a representative of the Christ, but he's telling you Christ failed. Think about that. Don't believe me. Go check all this stuff I'm telling you out. You can just scroll my page and all the evidence you need is on my Facebook. It's not hard to find. Not only that, all of the signs say he the last pope. When you go through all of the historical records of prophecies about the pope, that's it. Because he had to be exposed. And once he get exposed, the books say that the world would look and say, is this him? This one? Is this the one that had us all under this terror and treachery? Well, not exactly, but exactly that's him. He is the hidden hand behind all of the treachery and the wickedness on this planet. They go to JFK's speech, Separation of Church and State. I'm going to give you the historical background of that speech. The Separation of Church and State speech came about because Pope Francis being a Jesuit, and the Jesuit priesthood being the tyrants who come and put the pressure on the presidents and heads of state around the world in order to do the bidding of the Catholic Church. Mind you, this is not a condemnation of every Catholic priest. But the pedophile cult, the priests, they all his. You want to see a righteous priest? All you got to do is go to Chicago. Father Pfleger fight for the rights of the people. So that don't mean that all of the Catholics are bad. See, that's how they get us. Because they take a minority to shine a negative light on the majority. We done with that. This is a new era. We're going into the Aquarian age, the age of water, the age of spirit. And the Bible say that if you're going to worship the Creator, if you're going to worship, you need to worship in spirit and truth. Well, we're going into the Aquarian age. That's pure spirit. All we got to do now is marry the spirit of the Aquarian age to the fervor of the truth. Now, I wouldn't want no nation like to bomb the Vatican. That wouldn't be cool. I'll just take me a couple of these thugs and clear the land over there around it. I go in there myself because I would like to drag that sucker out into the square, cut that symbiote out his head, hold it up for the world to see. That's what's been causing all of Earth's problems for thousands of years. Thousands of years this little rotten bastard been causing problems. You see, it worked like this. The Yahweh dude, he's calling himself Maitreya over in Africa. Scroll down my page, couple months, you'll see all the information, all of the verification that you need to prove exactly what I'm saying so you don't have to just accept my word. One of my teachers said, if you're going to use right knowledge, you got to use the facts. And, you know, in the system we in, they believe in facts. And so, scroll down. Look. Tell me what you see. Maitreya was an ancient Babylonian deity that we call Enlil or Ninurtu. And he came down here and he took the reins from his brother who was Enki. Now Enki wasn't a bad dude. He was just a scientist. And he followed a code of science. But he was under the order of this guy that they call Enlil. And Enlil give him an order, and Enki being righteous by nature, he's naturally righteous, he has to obey the superior order of a superior command even if he don't agree. He told him that he couldn't do what the Queen of Heaven and Earth could do. He said, I don't care, figure it out, get it done. And he did the best he could, but it caused a lot of problems. In the process, it created a lot of birth defects, genetic infirmities, and inequalities in the genome of the human body. There was only one person on this planet at that time that could repair the genome. And a lot of the historians called him in Egypt Thoth or Jehuti. In your Bible, you see him in the Old Testament as Melchizedek, the King of Peace. And when you see this, you begin to realize that in order to clean the mess up, somebody had to make a major sacrifice, which is your Christ story. Because when you go back, every genetic event recorded in Kemet or Egypt, every genetic event, you see Thoth standing there. What happens when you get done doing the work of the repair, right? What happens? It's all fixed. Everybody has now earned the absolute right of ascension. So if you're willing to put in the work and the effort and you're willing to earn it, you can get as high as you want on this planet and in this plane. But if you want to be a lazy, selfish, self-centered slob that feels entitled, then you're on your own. You're on your own. We shouldn't have to tolerate this, and we don't. Marry the truth to the spirit, expose the beast. I'm willing to do it, but I can't do it unless the people want it done, because I'm not going to go against the will of the people. If you wish to be oppressed, that's fine. But Sun Wukong never fails. You need to understand that. Now, they say in the book, everybody was going to be waiting for somebody to crack the code. And they gave the book to the only one that could read it, and the one that read it was me. I read the book. I got the proof. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back in my temple of self and lay back, because at this time, in this day and age, we do not have to tolerate this injustice, this divide and conquer, the separation of the human families anymore. All royal families of the world gave their blood so that everyone could have a right to ascend. America became special when we granted the 13 colonies. We got sacked. We lost the war. The treaty settlement, treaty of peace and friendship. Somebody didn't like that. So King George sent his troops over here and installed an interim government under the false president George Washington. We are not under that anymore. That's expired. We are under the Continental Congress. That is our rightful standing in this land. Is the Continental Congress. It was the Iroquois Confederation of Nations. And as long as we sit here and accept this tyranny, we're going to be terrorized. They're going to call us everything. See, we're not supposed to have anything called the police.